As we approach the close of this year's Doha Forum, our final panel tackles one of the most consequential and defining issues of our time: the collapse of trust in governments and institutions. How can we rebuild it? Through shared action, collective commitments. Governments, corporations, media organizations, digital platforms, international institutions are all facing declining confidence. Many countries in the Middle East and in Africa have endured long histories of colonialism, resource extraction, exploitation, illegal military interventions, and brutal occupations. For decades, if not hundreds of years, there has been systemic, structural exploitation that has shaped today's inequalities. What does true justice, which is the theme of the Doha Forum this year, what does true justice for nations and peoples who have been scarred by these structural injustices look like? Should it be shaped by the countries themselves or imposed by external powers? It is my privilege to moderate this closing panel with our distinguished panelists. May I invite to join me here on stage His Excellency Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, President of the Federal Republic of Somalia, His Excellency Abdullah Al-Alimi Bawazir, Vice President of the Republic of Yemen, and last but not least, Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied Palestinian territories. Welcome to you all, and what a pleasure and a privilege to be sitting on stage here with you and to have Sheikh Hamoza with us in the audience as well. Let me begin with you, President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud. We talk about the issue of injustice and inequality, the loss of trust, but looking at Somalia's own history, briefly, one can say that it has been deeply shaped by foreign domination, colonialism. Its scars run very deep. It has been carved by colonial powers, the British, the French, the Italians, propped up by foreign backers as well, and left to struggle on its own, not just under the weight of decades of exploitation, but also decades of civil war, corruption, and security challenges. Let me ask you from your perspective, Mr. President, in Somalia, what are the key steps that you feel need to be taken to rebuild confidence and accountability?
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here. Very much grateful with the presence of Her Highness Sheikh Moza. Thank you very much for offering us this opportunity. The issue of the justice is one of the fundamental issues that are staying in the world globally today, and in Africa in particular. Most of us, we have inherited a colonial justice system that might not be transcend to our way of life, our culture, our values, and our beliefs as well. So that's one. The culture, not only the articles and the laws that are in place, but the way those laws have been accepted by the people. If the justice system does not have acceptance from the people, however it's good, it's beautiful, it will not work. In line with that, if I take the case of Somalia, as you rightly said, we didn't even inherit one justice system. We inherited from the colonial powers different justice systems. But however, we united those systems, but again, it didn't work for us for some time. Now, what we do is that Somalia has become a federal government with a level of autonomy to the local administrations and management of the people. So we decided to take the justice close to the people, number one. The people must have access to the justice at the lowest, the farthest corner of the country, everywhere. That is number one. Number two is whether the justice is based on the values. Somalia the population of Somalia is 100% Muslims, Sunni Muslims, Shafi'i madhab, but even then, they have to see it, the justice system responds or is in line with their value and their beliefs. That's why we have incorporated and aligned the values of the people. So the third point is how the people, the leadership of the country, or the leadership of a particular part of the country is so close to the people. If we took the style of the colonial powers where the colonial authorities were separate from the local people, now what's required is the leadership has to live with the people in the good days, in the difficult days, in the needy days, in the prosperous days, all this. So these are some of the fundamentals that I say that justice can be accepted and implemented in a fair way. Not only writing very, very good articles and laws only. Thank you.
So give us specifics about what kind of steps you and perhaps other African leaders are doing today to make sure that the future that you are building, the kind of justice that you do say you seek, is one that actually works for the youthful population of Africa and Somalia, a very rapidly growing population, half of the population under 25 years. And the same goes for the continent as a whole. 60% of the continent is under 25 years old, and it is the fastest growing population in the world. What are you doing to make sure that they can believe in the future?
As I said earlier, one important aspect is how to incorporate the laws of the country with the traditions and the values of the society. There are traditional laws that is not written, many of them not written, but accepted by the people. The justice system in that country has to reflect some of those traditional laws. Those traditional laws that cannot compete or follow with the modern way of life maybe can be reviewed or changed, but the people, what they believe, that's what I'm saying, the acceptance of the people is very important. And traditional laws are laws that has been accepted by the people. Many of them are not written even, but even then, again, from one generation to another, that's number one. Number two, the youth is to involve in the making of the laws. When a law is to be established, it has to take time, go to the people, explain to them what this law says, and get their input. That's how the people, particularly the young generation, feel that they are part, or they own the laws that are going to be implemented soon.
And too often they feel left out of the decision-making as well. Turning to the Vice President of Syria, Vice President of Yemen, Vice President Bawazir, we often forget that Yemen, after years of conflict, is still going through a war in many parts of the country. Given that conflict, displacement, continuing suffering on quite a large scale is going on after so much time, what for you does justice look like for Yemenis? To what extent can your government deliver in a way that rebuilds trust and dignity for the people who live in these war-torn areas?
شكرا جزيلا. أنا سعيد أن أحضر هذه الفعالية وبحضور الشيخ موسى في هذه الجلسة الختامية. فيما يتعلق باليمن، اليمن يمر بمرحلة صعبة، أكثر من 10 سنوات حرب. كان اليمنيين على أعتاب مرحلة جديدة في بناء دولتهم بعد حوار وطني شامل في العام 2012 و13 استمر لأشهر، ووضعوا تصور لبناء دولة يمنية مدنية حديثة قائمة على العدالة، قائمة على أن تكون هناك حكم رشيد وتوزيع عادل للسلطة والثروة، وبدأوا بوضع دستور جديد للبلاد. وقبل أن تنتهي هذه المرحلة حصل هناك انقلاب مسلح قادته الميليشيا الحوثية الإرهابية، واستولت على الدولة وعلى مؤسسات الدولة وعلى جزء كبير من البلاد. العدالة للأسف الشديد أنها فقدت في هذه المرحلة، وخلال هذه الفترة 11 عام كانت لدينا محطات تفاوض وسلام، وللأسف الشديد لغياب الرؤية الشاملة والحل الشامل ولغياب الانطلاق نحو تأسيس سلام دائم شامل يقوم على معالجة جذور هذه المشكلة، للأسف لم نصل إلى هذه المحطة النهائية للسلام. بدأنا من بعد الحرب مباشرة في 2015 دورات تفاوض في سويسرا، في جنيف، في بيل، ثم في الكويت، ثم في ستوكهولم. كل هذه المحطات للأسف لأن لم نشخص جذور هذه المشكلة. انتقلت الحرب اليوم من صراع داخلي إلى صراع متعدد الأطراف، دخل فيها الجانب الطائفي والجانب السياسي والجانب الاقتصادي والبعد الإقليمي والبعد الدولي، وأصبح الحوثي اليوم مهدد إقليمي ودولي عابر للحدود. بهذا المستوى تشابكت فيه المشكلة وتعقدت وغابت فيه مفهوم العدالة. اليوم إذا أردنا أن نحقق للشعب اليمني عدالة حقيقية هو بأن ننظر إلى اليمن ليس كمهدد ولكن كفرصة حقيقية يمكن أن تتحول من مهدد أمني يهدد الإقليم والعالم إلى فرصة لبناء دولة حقيقية. اليمن بلد عظيم له تاريخ كبير ولديه تنوع جغرافي كبير ولديه كتلة بشرية شابة قادرة على أن تعمل، لديه سواحل كبيرة، لديه مقومات أن تكون وأن تتحول من تهديد إقليمي ودولي إلى فرصة حقيقية لبناء دولة كبيرة قائمة على عدل وعلى مساواة وعلى حكم رشيد وعلى توزيع عادل للسلطة والثروة. العالم اليوم ينبغي أن ينظر لليمن بمنظور مختلف، حتى يوم أن نقدم مقاربة سياسية ينبغي أن تكون مقاربة قائمة على استغلال هذا الملف لتحويله من ملف حرب وملف تحديد أمني وملف ما يسمى بعود الكبريت الذي يمكن أن ينفجر في أي لحظة إلى بلد قادرة أن تنمو وإلى أن تعيش وإلى أن تضع هذه الفئة الكبيرة من الكتلة البشرية في محل آمن. الأساس اليوم العدالة ينبغي أن تكون، لأنه بدون
Let me ask you, if I may interrupt, what this justice that you are thinking about, what it requires, to what extent does it require accountability, holding not just, as you mentioned, the internal local actors accountable for some of the crimes that have been committed over the last decade, but some of the external actors who've been fueling this ongoing war. Yemen is often referred to as one of the poorest countries in the world. Do you have the wherewithal to seek justice and accountability?
نحن في الحقيقة خطة العدالة اليوم تقوم أساساً أولاً على الانتصار للشعب من خلال تقديم خدمات نوعية لأبناء الشعب وخروجهم من مرحلة الحرب إلى مرحلة السلام. العدالة إذا أردنا اليوم أن نتحرك فيها فهي أن تنصب الجهود الإقليمية والدولية مع الجهود المحلية لوجود حل سياسي عادل يحمل اليمن من مرحلة الصراع إلى مرحلة السلام. أما ما يتعلق بعدالة المحاسبة، كل بلد تتعرض لحرب هناك أخطاء كبيرة ترتكب سواء داخلياً أو خارجياً. للأسف تحولت اليمن إلى ساحة صراع لقوى مختلفة. اليوم هناك تخادم للحوثيين. أنا أحيي الأخ الرئيس الصومالي بجنبي هنا. هناك تخادم للحوثيين مع جهات داخل الصومال، وأعتقد أنه الإخوة في الصومال يعانون لأن هناك، وتقرير الأمم المتحدة وفريق الخبراء أكد على أن هناك عمليات تنسيق لتهريب سلاح لتدريب مسلحين، وأصبح الحوثي تهديد عابر للحدود. العدالة تحتاج اليوم أي مرحلة قادمة تقوم على أولاً أن نؤسس لمرحلة جديدة في اليمن تقوم على أن اليمن تعود إلى مرحلة القانون، تعود إلى حكم حقيقي يستند الناس فيه إلى مرجعية القانون بدون أن تكون عدالة انتقالية. واحدة من الملفات التي تم الاتفاق عليها في مؤتمر الحوار الشامل هي العدالة الانتقالية. هذه العدالة ينبغي أن تكون في مرحلة تسوية الحرب، واحدة من البنود التي يخضع الناس جميعا لها. كل من تسبب في مأساة اليمنيين، كل من تسبب في معاناة اليمنيين ينبغي أن يأخذ حقه العادل وفق القانون الإنساني والدولي في هذا الأمر.
Thank you, Vice President. Francesca Albanese, obviously we just heard the view from Africa, and another part of Asia, but there is absolutely no shortage, is there, of inequalities, injustices from Africa to the Middle East, but specifically and perhaps nowhere more than in occupied Palestine, which is your mandate. It isn't just governments and political leaders who are either unable or unwilling to fulfill some of their legal and moral obligations. It's also major institutions like the United Nations, given the fact that it is the world's foremost peacekeeping body. It has failed repeatedly, as we all know, to secure a ceasefire for Gaza over 2 years. It was blocked by one permanent member at least 6 times. How do you deliver justice for Palestinians, given this reality, and would it require accountability, including from outside actors who have, for the past 2 years, either stood by silently or were complicit, actively fueling Israel's war machine?
Good afternoon, everyone. I would also like to extend my appreciation and gratitude to the Doha Forum, Excellencies, Sheikh Moussa. I think that if there is a word that comes to my mind more than any other these days, is rapture, is apocalypse. I've often described the situation of Gaza, of Palestine, in fact, as apocalyptic, and I'll get back to it, but the question of rapture is harshly felt inside the international system. Those who behave, those who believe, those who advocate for the application of, and those who have to use international law as a compass to guide politics. And today they are confronted with the reality where the compass works. It's not international law that has a problem, it's politics. It's politics that has completely lost its moral compass. And is it new? No, it's not new. Palestine bears testament to all injustices that other parts of the world, like Somalia, Yemen, and many others of distinguished representatives who are here today speak to. What I think, and also the breaking of the trust into the political system, I'm equally horrified as a lawyer, as a special rapporteur, to see the United Nations, the organizations whose very existence is connected to the never again, to the crimes, to the horrible, abominable crimes that were committed during World War II, to make sure that we do not get there again, that never again is really respected, to preserve peace and stability, premised upon the respect of everyone's dignity and equality. I'm equally horrified, I was saying, to see that, yes, it took 2 years to arrive, to vote, to pass a resolution that included the ceasefire, but also the fact that now the ceasefire has been agreed upon. This is becoming the new tool for Israel to continue the genocide, to continue what the genocide didn't achieve. The ethnic cleansing of Palestine, the total crushing of the Palestinians' right to self-determination. And this is why I say this is a moment that calls for full introspection and realization of how are we making to repair that trust. Because the trust that is at the basis of the social contract that exists at the domestic level in democracies, but also at the international level in the United Nations, is under test today. If you see, for one thing, I'm proud to be a Western person, a European today, is not just because of the system of values premised upon the respect of international law, the rule of law, or equality before the law. No, it's the young people, the young generation, which in the West has been the first from the United States to Europe to Australia and other places, former colonies, former settler colonial endeavors. They have stood up against the genocide. They have been the first to protest, followed by the workers. And what they have been met with? batons by the police, criminalizations by government, and other forms of repression in the cradle of democracies. So this is why I'm saying Palestine has been an awakening, a wake-up call for all of us. And I often speak, and this is the last remark I wanted to share, of the Palestine effect. This is not the first genocide in human history. This is at least the third genocide, if not the fourth or the fifth, that occurs in my living time, my lifetime. This is the first genocide that awakens global conscience and global response. Palestine is allowing us to see what the law becomes when it's in the hands of power. Palestine is allowing us to see what connects all injustices, what happens to Yemen, to Sudan, to Congo, and including in places where poverty has not been so rooted as it is today for a long time, including in the West. We have a common enemy, and we need to face it, where the politics is at the service of economic interests.
But just to follow up briefly, Francesca, you mentioned that we have the laws, we have the conventions on genocide and everything else. It is the implementation that lacks. I wonder to what extent it is accurate to say that the world has lost its moral compass, or as you've just alluded to now, the genocide in Gaza has actually exposed the level of dishonesty, and let's face it, hypocrisy within the Western world particularly. So to that point, and another one that I want to ask you about very briefly before I move on to our other two speakers, you are the first UN Special Rapporteur to ever have been sanctioned by any state. The United States imposed sanctions on you for simply doing your job, for publishing reports that have taken on corporations and governments that you believe have been complicit in Israel's genocide in Gaza. You refuse to be intimidated. You and I had a conversation a few days ago. You say you will not be intimidated, but surely it must do something to the rule of law and anyone willing to uphold it despite this campaign of intimidation and bullying.
Look,
does it?
What happens to me is what happens to anyone who stands in solidarity, not with the Palestinian people, with justice. Because today, the international, what the United States sanctioning me is telling to the international system is, we don't need you. And this is the culmination of a series of attacks, of a series of aggressions, a smear campaign. Everyone who's been trying to infuse an ounce of respect for international law in the context of the aggression on Gaza has been accused of anti-Semitism, supporting terrorism, from the Pope to the Secretary General, and of course, special rapporteurs among others. So I could speak to what has happened to me, and what I think is so pernicious of this is the tolerance. So you ask me why you do not, why do you continue? Why do you persist? Because what I'm left with is my dignity, and it's my voice. And while no member states have done what I think should be done, getting together, standing together, and standing up against the United States and tell enough, this is a violation. This is the first UN person who's been sanctioned in 80 years of UN life, and it cannot constitute a precedent. It's illegal. It's against the UN Charter. It's against the Convention on Privileges and Immunities. And so, please, you have to withdraw the sanctions. No member state has done it. It doesn't speak to my courage. It speaks to the broad cowardice that exists in the international community, and I cannot be held accountable for that. But, there is a but. I will not be silent till I will have breath in my lungs. I will continue to advocate for justice, not as a lawyer, not as the special rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territory, but as a mother, as a mother who doesn't want that the brutality that has been unleashed day in and day out with the complacency and the complicity of so many governments, especially from the part of the world I come from, will become the rule. I cannot accept as a mother that this is normalized, and this is why I keep on saying we still have time. What we are using is not something we have inherited from our ancestors. It's something that we are borrowing, and let me be very honest, we are stealing from our children, and this is why I think let's take it as an opportunity to change.
Thank you very much, Francesca. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, just looking and reflecting on what we just heard, and speaking as an African leader who has seen for years the way the current world order, the Western-dominated rules-based order, uses our global institutions, our legal mechanisms as tools against the powerless. The Security Council of the United Nations to this day doesn't have a single African permanent member. How important is it to change this reality? The ICC, we know, has operated for years with a focus on African leaders. How do you view the current system, and what needs to happen? Can we carry on with this same system, or do we need some kind of overhaul, not to say revolution?
Well, the international or the global system of justice